Good afternoon, book lovers. It's Robert Boyd coming at you with another book review. This one's a new book that I just got. Robyn O'Neill, 20 Years of Drawings. And it's a kind of it's weird because this book was actually published in I think 2017 or no 2018, but it's really only become available now. And I think this I'm not really totally sure the whole story behind it, but I think the publisher might have gone belly up or something. And as someone who's worked in the publishing field, that kind of thing happens all the time. But somehow Robyn O'Neill got the copies of it and now has it for sale, and that's who I bought it from. It's from Robyn O'Neill. In fact, she gave me a lovely little dedication in the book. Not that I'm close friends with Robyn O'Neill or anything. I think I've met her once, and I've seen several of her shows. But we did exchange emails earlier this year, and because I can't remember where I heard this from, but I started listening to her podcast, which is called Me Reading Stuff, and it's available on all the sort of podcast providers, and it's literally. Well, I mean, if you go to her podcast and listen to it, it'll be her talking about like her daily life. She lives in Washington State, and it'll be like what TV shows she's watching, what she has been eating, and what she likes to eat, and what she doesn't like to eat. She'll give bad reviews to like local fast food places, and just sort of what's going on in her day-to-day life. But then she'll read something from like a poem or even a segment of prose from something that she's read recently that's meaningful to her. And her podcast, even though her thing is a podcast, it doesn't have the visual element that a video does, it was inspirational to me, and that's one of the reasons I do this video. It's not really a podcast, but it's a video series, and so I've liked her work for a long time, and I'm glad that there's a really nice coffee table style book about her work, and it's an unusual format because most of her pieces are horizontal, as opposed to vertical portrait format pieces. The book itself is landscape format, which is appropriate because a lot of her works are landscapes of a sort. And let me just say a little bit about her. She was born in 1977. Oh wait, before I get further, I'm going to say something about the music we just heard. It was the beginning of Act 2 of Rusalka by Antonin Dvorak, an opera. And I really don't know anything about Rusalka, except that I was listening to this today and it caught my ear. Anyway, so I think of her as a Texas artist, even though she doesn't live in Texas and hasn't lived in Texas in a while. And in fact, wasn't born in Texas, so I guess it's kind of stupid for me to think of her as a Texas artist. But she did study at art at Texas A&M Commerce, which is an amazingly productive art program. She studied with Lee Baxter Davis and Michael Miller, both of whom are really good artists. And Trenton Doyle Hancock was one of her fellow students, which I'll get back to because there's a commonality between her work and Trenton Doyle Hancock's, which is a thing that I think people of that particular generation are into, but I'll mention that later. The introduction is by Alison de Lima Green, who's a curator of modern art at the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. And she does a good job of saying like who Robyn O'Neill's influences are, what affected her, and Robyn O'Neill doesn't hide those influences, and I'll speak to that a little bit as we go on. One thing that's interesting about the book is that, let's say I'm opening it up to these two drawings, these two sort of upside down wave drawings. You'll notice that there's no type on either page. All the details about the drawings are in the back. So when you're flipping through it, you have pure illustration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some specific paintings. First, I want to show you. I've shown you the cover, and I'm going to show you the little dedication she gave me about hoping that the works didn't haunt my dreams, and you know, I can't think of anything more terrifying than being in a vast snowy landscape. But my dreams are mostly pretty urban. Today I dreamt I was in Seattle, but it was in a dream Seattle. I say today, this morning. Anyway, the first painting we're looking at is everything that stands will be at odds with its neighbor, and everything that falls will perish without grace. From 2003. It's not a painting. They're all drawings, by the way. They're all made with graphite on paper. And her titles, while not exclusively really long, a lot of them are really long and really kind of literary. And that fits her thing. I mean, she's a very literary person. It's a vast snowy landscape, and there's lots of men in it, wearing black tracksuits. And they're engaged in a variety of mysterious activities. It has kind of a Flemish Renaissance look, like a Hieronymus Bosch or Peter Bruegel. And I'm going to show you a detail where two of the men are standing looking at a dead doe. How it died, I don't know. But one thing about this picture is that it certainly implies a narrative. Something happened that led up to this circumstance of all these men hanging out in their tracksuits. And the men in tracksuits are going to appear again and again. As darkness falls on this heartless land, my brother holds tight my feeble hand, from 2005. And another snowy landscape, another group of men in tracksuits, except these men are all hugging. So it's men hugging, and it could be like a men's retreat or something. Who knows? Although the previous painting implies that there's something more going on than just men getting together and hugging. Okay, the next painting, or next drawing is, Oh, How the Heartless Haunt Us. So you can see that it's a much darker drawing, and I guess it's at night. And there's a large tree, and I'm showing you a detail, and there's 12 men hanging from the tree. Some are hanging by their feet, so I suspect they were dead before they got hung up. But some appear to be hanging by their necks. So a grim image. And one of the people that Alison de Lima Green refers to as influencing Robyn O'Neill is Henry Darger, who also did these big panoramic pictures of a lot of stuff happening with a lot of figures in the pictures. And I'm going to show you one that I actually showed when I did the report on the Henry Darger book a few days ago, called "The Glandillians Were About to Hang the Brave Little Girls," And I have no idea if there's a direct connection, but it made an instant visual connection in my mind. So this appears to be part of a story, a vast fiction that Robyn O'Neill made. And that's what I wanted to say was similar with her work and Trenton Doyle Hancock's, is that even though an individual drawing might have these individual elements in it, the fact is that there seems to be an underlying narrative connecting them. And it might be that only Robyn O'Neill knows what this narrative is, and it might be that she doesn't really have a firm narrative in her mind. But if she does, it makes sense that it would exist, because you've got this group of characters. They're all dressed the same. They're all in the same location, and stuff is happening. So this next one is called A Disharmony, and it's not part of the narrative. If it is, I can't really see how it fits in, but it might be. Maybe there's a connection that I just don't know about. So we have this horse that's really finely rendered, and in fact, so finely rendered it made me think of George Stubbs, but I had no idea if Robyn O'Neill is a Stubbs fan. And its head is obscured by this dark cloud that's sort of hanging in front of the head, between the head and the viewer. And to me, it just seems like a surreal image with no implied narrative, although any image of a identifiable thing implies a narrative in a way. Now we're going to go back to the men in black tracksuits. Masses and masses rove a darkened pool. Never is there laughter on this ship of fools. And as anyone who listens to her podcast knows, Robyn O'Neill likes poetry very much. And so this seems like a lines from a poem, but it might be a poem that she wrote just for the title of this piece. So now we've got the tracksuit guys. They're on these gigantic rafts, but they're just rafts. There's no motor or sail or any other thing on them. Just these guys floating in a huge body of water. It could be a fjord or a lake or something. And I'm going to show you a detail so you can see the men on the raft. I have no way how to interpret this image except to say, and this is true with all the images, is that the very kind of weirdness and mystery of them is attractive to me. And here's one that appears maybe to be part of this narrative, although the figures in it are so small you can't tell whether they're the men in black tracksuits, and you can't even tell if they're men. It's called The Edge of the World, and you can see why. These figures are falling off an impossible wedge-shaped cliff that seems to be kind of floating or projecting into kind of a vague sky. Whether it's a mass suicide or they're running in fear from something, who knows? All that stuff, all the stuff that would explain it is left out. Just the mystery of the image is left. And similarly, Cut My Ropes, Let Me Fall, from 2008. Men are falling into the sea, or I say men, figures are falling into the sea, and ropes are visible if you look closely. And the sea waves seem really animated. And when I saw this image, and really the next one, and actually several of them, several images where she's drawn the sea, I was reminded of the novel Solaris by the Polish writer Stanislaw Lem. And of course that novel was made into a very famous movie by Tarkovsky, but one thing that the novel has that none of the movies that none of the two adaptations I've seen of it don't have, is that it describes the ocean. Solaris is a planet that's covered with an ocean, but the ocean itself is a living organism. And the motions of the ocean, the waves and tides and stuff, appear to actually be deliberate, if not conscious, movements on the part of the ocean. And it describes them in somewhat weird and disturbing detail. And that's what these oceans look like to me. They don't look like real oceans. The waves, the way the like little tendrils are coming out of the waves appears like more like a living thing than the sort of random motions of an ocean. And this next one, On Sorrow, is the same thing, except our same kind of thing, except the ocean is upside down now, and that even makes it more alien, more like a science fiction ocean, more like Solaris. And this one, On Sorrow, is at the Museum of Fine Arts, so I've seen it in person. It's huge. Robyn O'Neill is not trying to fake you out with a realistic drawing of the ocean. Then another kind of surreal image, The Five Echoes from 2016. So we have 5 mountainous horizons floating above what appears to be an ocean at different angles. And I have no interpretation of this. One thing I noticed is that it seems, the way it's reproduced in the book, it seems kind of brown, but according to the description, it is graphite, so maybe that's the color of the paper, I'm not sure. Everything is black and white, or rather gray and white in this book, but it might be that the paper has different colors. I'm not sure. Maybe she'll pop up and tell us. And this last one from 2016 is called Government Bureau, after Tucker. And there's a famous painting by George Tucker, who is a post-war American magic realist painter, who painted these kind of often slightly disturbing scenes of kind of paranoia. Although I think he's actually a much more upbeat painter than that. But the ones that are memorable are the sort of paranoid ones, including this one called Government Bureau, where people are in line at a government bureau, and the bureaucrats are behind windows, and you can see their eyes. You can't see anyone's face. So that's what she's flashing off of, the fact that the figures in the pictures, their faces are obscured. And so I'm showing you the George Tucker painting. So you can see that it might be inspired by the Tucker painting, but it's very different. The figures in Robyn O'Neill's drawing are much larger. You don't see full figure, and their faces are obscured not by facing away, as they are in the Tucker painting, but by these waves or whatever they are. I'm not sure. Something's between you and the figure. Anyway, that's my report on 20 years of drawings by Robyn O'Neill. I'll put a link on how to get the book, and I highly recommend seeing her art. She's in several permanent collections. And one thing I'm going to mention is that I saw the drawing, the ocean drawing. What was it now? On Sorrow, at the MFAH, because they recently opened a brand new building that has all their modern and contemporary stuff in it that has literally been in storage for years. And I highly recommend it if you can make it to Houston. If COVID ever ends and you somehow find yourself in Houston, please go to the Kinder building at the Museum of Fine Arts and check out this Robyn O'Neill in person. And I would say that's true for any Robyn O'Neill. I know she's in several other collections around the country. And that's it. Thanks very much. Goodbye.